Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier Herit. I'm a brand ambassador for Grand Marnier in United States. Today, the Campari Academy and Grand Marnier are very excited to partner with Portland Cocktail Week on this new educational programming. For this special edition, I would like to welcome Chelsea Gregoire, a little clap, who is based in Baltimore. Our numerous awards and accomplishments include being named America's Beverage Director of the Year by Esquire magazine and Eater Young Gun, and even Best Bartender by multiple local publications. Chelsea is going to share her experience and knowledge on how to cost a drink menu for restaurants and bars, and we will discuss, of course, the importance of the market research. Hi, Chelsea. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate it.
Of course, you're just missing a red carpet, but we do it with whatever we have on Zoom or on Facebook. Chelsea, can you tell us more about your career and what made you decide to go into this industry?
Yeah. So for me, I have a lot of people, I feel like more people know this nowadays than they did a few years ago, but I have a master's degree in theology. And a big focus of my studies was in the building of communities, and, bringing people together. And, one thing led to another in my life. And, I was working in hospitality and realized that, I can build that amazing community, in a bar, in a restaurant. And, so that's what makes me so passionate about, making community and building teams and providing for others and providing great experience. So
awesome. I guess we have to be passionate about what we do, and you seem to be very passionate. I'm sure it's why you're so talented and where you are right now today. I would like, just before we start this presentation, I would like to bring a little refresher about Grand Marnier. Of course, Grand Marnier has been around for a long time. Everyone knows the brand, but sometimes it's good to, and thank you very much for bringing this beautiful bottle in front of the camera. So for people who knows Grand Marnier, but sometimes forget what is inside the bottle, we have to know that, first of all, Grand Marnier has a rich history and heritage. The distillery was first created in 1827, so quite a long time ago. And at this time, we were only making fruit liquors in the suburb of Paris, like crème of cassis, crème de pêche. And fruit liquors were very popular at this time. Everything started to change when Louis-Alexandre Marnier, I'm sure the name sounds familiar, joined the team and was able to create one of the first orange liquor blended with cognac, which was named Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge, that we have read here. Cordon Rouge translate for red ribbon. And of course, it was created in 1880. So since 1880, we have the same formula, the same recipe inside the bottle. So there's a savoir-faire, there's an heritage we've been doing for so many years. And in 2020, it's still here in many, many places and many bars and restaurants. A few facts we should know about Grand Marnier. The meaning behind the shape of a bottle, actually, and I'm very thankful you have a bottle in front of the camera, so I don't have to take mine. It's actually the shape of a cognac pot still. So not many people know that, and I thought it was pretty cool that since 1880 we have the same bottle shape. You should know also that in the bottle of Grand Marnier you have 51% cognac with 49% orange liqueur. So it's definitely cognac forward inside Grand Marnier. Also, you should know that we source our orange from the Caribbean islands. They are hand-picked when they're still green. They are peeled, dry with the Caribbean sun, sent to the distillery in cognac, where we're going to finalize the orange essence. And one more thing you should know about Grand Marnier, it's versatile. What does it mean? Grand Marnier can be enjoyed neat on the rocks. As a modifier and a margarita, we all know it's very popular with Cadillac margarita, but also as a base spirit, using, for example, 1.5 ounce of Grand Marnier, which because Grand Marnier is 80 proof, and it's a cognac base. And of course, we have an amazing, and I'm very proud to represent this portfolio because we don't have just a Cordon Rouge. We have also a whole Grand Marnier family with other cuvées from the Louis-Alexandre, which has been released last year, and more higher cuvée with Centenaire, the 1880 and the Quintessence. But today we're going to focus on the Grand Marnier Cordon Rouge. And of course, I think we have a lot of things to learn about costing the drinks and how to create costing a menu. So Chelsea, thank you very much for listening to me. And now this is the show is all you. And also, if I may say one thing for everyone watching us, if you have any questions, feel free to type your questions. We will respond to all your questions after each segment in the presentation. Wow. So if questions are welcome, we're here to share the knowledge with everyone. Chelsea, you're on.
Awesome. All right. Well, Costing 101, here we are. I want to start just before I even get into making a drink today, by saying why this is important to me. For a long time in my career, there weren't a lot of people around me that were willing to teach me. And so a lot of these things I had to learn on my own, and I had to figure them out on my own. And I'm sure at many points that I did it wrong. And, the saying goes, there's many ways to skin a cat. So of course, the way I do it may not be exactly how you do it, but I hope that, we have a nice mix of people tuning in today, people who are completely unfamiliar with costing, and maybe some people who've been doing it for years. And I hope that there's a little bit of takeaway for everyone, because knowledge is power. So let's hit it. We're going to start with a cocktail, and we're going to use that cocktail as a teaching tool. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order, but this is a basic sour spec that I'm calling Le Grand Ancillary, which is the big nerd or the big intellectual. That was for Xavier. I'm glad he appreciates that.
I feel like a nerd every day, and I like the French word that you put into this, the French care behind the name, I would say.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to start with those that ounce of lemon juice going into our shaker. We're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. And then, of course, the star of the show, Grand Marnier. We're going to do 2 ounces of that. And as Xavier mentioned, it is versatile and it's mostly cognac. So using it as a base is totally possible and delicious. So we're going to do that. Put that back up here so y'all can see it. Thank you to Grand Marnier for sponsoring this class. It's really, really great to work with such a brand that is so supportive of bartenders and their knowledge and their growth in their career. So that's really, really neat. 3 dashes of orange bitters going in. And then we're going to shake it up, and we're going to get our coupe glass ready to go here. All right. Just needs a quick shake because I have been chilling that ice for a while. We're going to do a cold shaker. So we're going to double strain that up into our coupe glass. And we're going to garnish that with a fresh lemon peel. Just to bring up those lemon juice notes.
That looks delicious right now. I want to have one.
Please, by all means, if you need to step away and go make yourself a drink. I love teaching, but I'm also just a generally very nervous person. So having a cocktail with me is going to hopefully make me teaching you math a little bit more fun. So
we need to get inspired. Santé. And I think it's amazing that you were able to showcase that we can use Grand Marnier as a base spirit. Sometimes people forget that Grand Marnier is just a modifier for margarita. There's so much more we can do, and it really works. So thank you much for making this recipe.
Of course. I can attest to its deliciousness. It is wonderful. So thank you for representing a great product.
Awesome.
All right. So before we get started, everyone, if you are a note taker like me out there, grab your notebooks, grab your pens, grab your phones, whatever you need to take some notes. I will also, as we go through the presentation, there's going to be some specific slides that are really, really good for taking a screenshot. And they're going to make this available after the fact, so you will have the whole slideshow to refer back on as well. But if you're like me, when I'm watching presentations, I like to take screenshots and just kind of like have those snippets with me in addition to having all the notes later. So learn however is most comfortable to you. Math to a lot of people is very scary to me my whole life. I was only really good at word problems, and until I realized that costing and doing math in a bar setting is basically one giant word problem, that's when things became a little bit easier for me, and now I can't get enough of it. So we're going to start with some base knowledge that we need to do our costing. So the first things we're going to kind of look at is we need to know things about our products, right? So we need to know what size of bottle we are using, how much juice is in the bottle. And, as you're purchasing for your bar, this is maybe like a 201 kind of tidbit, but you may be purchasing different size bottles depending on the volume that you use, depending on the cost to you per pour. So it's just something to be aware of, because that's going to affect your costing, as we'll see a little bit down the road. Also, how do you make your syrup? So don't at me. I do my simple syrup by weight. So equal parts by weight, and that's just how I have done it. And I think it creates a really delicious marshmallowy light simple syrup. But however you do your simple syrup is fine, but it's really important to know your recipes. Have them written down, make sure that they can be made consistently, because if we're not making things consistently, then you can't cost them consistently. One of the biggest nerd things that I'm going to ask you to kind of think about is, what is your median juice yield of a lemon, which is a bunch of big words, I guess, for saying how much do we get out of a lemon, right? What does that lemon yield to us? What do we have to use from it? Also, we know that a lot of our prep in bars is a little inconsistent, and not in a bad way, but it's something we just have to pay attention to. You may run out of lemon juice in the middle of service and need to juice lemons right out of the walk-in. Those lemons are going to be cold, and they're going to yield a little bit less juice, as opposed to if your lemon has warmed up to room temperature, you're going to get a little bit more. So we'll see this a little bit later too, but I also juiced the lemon that I used in this cocktail, and I figured out the median pour that I was able to get out of that. And then, of course, we're costing, so make sure you know the price of all of those items. So sugar, bulk sugar, what do you know the price of? Lemons, the bottle of spirit, the bottle of bitters. Okay, so that's kind of your checklist before you get started. So let's hit the ground running. All right. You're going to see a couple of gifts in here. I love them. Nerd stuff does really excite me. So if you think I'm nerdy now, just wait. It's going to get worse. All right. So if anybody remembers back to basic math, when we're going back like elementary school, middle school, you probably remember them talking about the lowest common denominator. It was a way to add fractions together by simplifying those fractions so that, the number below the line was always the same, and then you just add them across, right? So similarly to that, we want to find the lowest common denominator, the smallest possible measurement that we'll use. So for juice, syrup, and spirits, that's going to be ounces. And for bitters, it's going to be dashes, right? Those are the smallest amounts that you're going to use, and they're also the roundest amounts. So we're going to start with lemon. We're also going to start in particular with the two most difficult things to cost, just to kind of get those out of the way. So then everything after that is going to be super easy. Okay, so lemons. And this goes for any fruit, any juice that you are creating. So my lemons, I got a really good lemon, not super pithy, not super thick rind. So I was actually getting 1.5 ounces of juice out of a cold lemon and 2 ounces of juice out of a room temperature lemon, which is, they were normal size lemons, not big guys. So I was actually really impressed by that. So you're going to need to know what that is in the middle. So in between 1.5 and 2 ounces is 1.75, right? That would be in the middle of those two. So that's the measurement, that's the ounce yield we're going to use to calculate from this point forward. And the reason being, it's impossible to make sure that every time you juice lemons, they are yielding the same, that they are the same temperature. Like, it's just not possible. So get ahead of yourself and set yourself up for success so that when you do get a nice string of lemons that are all yielding 2 ounces, like rock and roll, now you're like on the upside, right? Now your cost is actually a little bit more than what you're actually spending. So then you've already pushed yourself financially in a better direction, right? This is also something you want to audit at least once a quarter, once a season, as your produce suppliers change their suppliers and they're getting them from different places. That's something you want to consider, and you want to make sure that your yield that you're using to calculate all of your costing is still that median yield. So this is something once every 3 months you want to do, or if you are just juicing one day and you're like, wow, this case of lemons sucks, I'm going to keep an eye on this, and maybe you're doing it once a month. But it's something that you have to systematically keep an eye on to make sure you are getting your money's worth. So I talked to my friend who's working in a restaurant right now. He's getting 165 of these lemons in a case. And his price on the next line is that $39.45, right? So to get, ooh, thank you, Leo. I love that. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult. I could point a laser at the screen, but that would probably just blind everybody instead of actually being effective. So I'm glad that we're working collaboratively on this. Okay, so if you have 165 lemons in a case, right? And you are getting 1 3/4 ounces of juice out of each lemon, you're going to multiply those two things together, and that's how we get 288.75, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Send your vibes out into the ether. Okay.
So do you see a lot of change of pricing with the fruits? I know citrus went up from when 2 years ago, it used to be cheaper, correct?
Right. And so the purpose of doing that re-audit once a quarter, you're also re-auditing your prices.
Yeah.
Most produce people are releasing, depending on how like big box this producer is, they're releasing it once a month or like once a week. And so you can like keep track of that. And if you see a massive fluctuation, maybe that's also going to cue you to look back at your costing. So let's get back to it. $39.45 is that cost of that case of lemons. I was looking at this and I was like, that is low. I love that. $39.45 divided by your number of ounces total in a case. And remember, we're using the median. So if we get a little bit less in some lemons and a little bit more in others, it still like balances out a little bit. That's going to be 14 cents per ounce. Okay. So lemon juice, a little bit, the moral of the story for this is just pay attention to what you're getting and make sure that, as you're keeping your eyes open, you're watching the quality of the fruit, you're watching the price of the fruit, you're watching the quantities. Sometimes, your kitchen, if you're working in a restaurant, sometimes your chef team is getting a lower quantity of lemons because it's better for them cost-wise. So it may not hurt your cost, it may actually help your cost, but it's something to know as you're getting super down and nerdy. All right, dad jokes, had to put it in there. Okay, so let's move on to syrup, and then we're gonna pause to take any questions that might have come in. Syrup is another one of those technical ones, as you can see from the slide. So, okay, so quarts. We know them as quart containers, deli containers. A quart is 32 ounces. Okay, we're typically storing this in here. If we're storing them in big Cambros, they have quarts on the side as well. So then you can just, break it down, remember, to that lowest common denominator, which is going to be your quart. Quarts, we're then going to break down into ounces so that everything is working in the same realm. The complicated thing with syrups is that they typically require sugar. And sugar and even our things like honey, agave, things that we would also be cutting and putting into a syrup are all measured by weight for the most part. So we need to take our weight and figure out via our recipe how this calculates out. Okay, so I'm gonna like go through this one pretty slowly because there's a lot of numbers up here and a lot of like decimal point weirdness. So just hang in there. You can do this. You are great and fantastic. So the sugar, I used a standard white sugar in this simple syrup that I used. That came in a 50-pound bag. Not to me. Once again, I talked to my friend in a restaurant. You're probably, if you're in a cocktail bar, if you're in a restaurant, you're probably getting a giant quantity of sugar. So a 50-pound bag, right? 50 pounds converts over to 22,679.6 grams per bag. This is a pro tip. If you type into Google how many ounces are in a pound, how many grams are in a pound, any of that, the result is going to immediately yield a conversion at the top of your results. So then you can plug in your numbers. So if you say, how many grams are in a pound, it's going to pop up 1 pound, so many grams, and you can just replace the 1 with 50 and it'll give you the answer. So that's my pro tip. I also have an app on my phone for conversions, but the thing to remember with conversions that typically like can make things more complicated is you have to work through your steps and wait before you can start to convert that in your recipe to like a liquid volume. Okay, like weight and liquid volume don't always meet up. Sometimes they do, but there's a reason why we have ounces versus fluid ounces, right? You need to like make the distinction in your brain to make sure that things are costed and you don't spin yourself into a weird, wild, confusing place. Okay. So in our 50-pound bag that we're getting for $33.56, we have this 22,000 number. So you want to cost out how much it costs per gram. So then you can determine what you are putting into your recipe. So for me, I know that my recipe for using refined white sugar in a simple syrup, equal parts by weight, sugar and water. I know that I'm using 500 grams of water to 500 grams of sugar. And so that thankfully made a really nice like round number here. But if I know that I am using 500 grams of sugar in my recipe, I can then take that price per gram, multiply it in, and know how much my quart costs. Okay, so to review, that 0.00148 seems really small, but grams are very, very small. So it becomes significant rather quickly. That is your cost per gram in this scenario. Then you're multiplying it by the grams in your recipe. And then you're getting your price per quart or your price per yield. Say your recipe makes 3 quarts of simple syrup. You're going to need to then divide it by 3 at that point to know what your quart cost is. Then when it's in quarts, you can divide it by that 32 and you get your price per ounce, which in this case is just over 2 cents per ounce. And that is in the realm of what we expect from simple syrup. Before I move on and before we take a couple questions for a second, I just want to say that like this one is super complicated, and I'll give you a formula that's actually broken down pretty simply a little bit later. We're getting like, this is the word problem time before I give you like the magical equation that solves it all. But just note that like, this is like fake numbers, and you're going to have to do this on your own. And it's okay if you are like kind of tripping over all these numbers. It's all right. You're doing good. With syrups, we often add things in. Being able to know how to do this weight to liquid conversion is really important, because a lot of the things we're infusing are either we can measure them out by weight, or we can, we're doing like liquid type infusions, mixing them in, not necessarily using water or entirely water. So this has a lot of like different plug and play. So don't worry looking at this slide and be like, this in no way dictates anything I'm doing with my syrups. I promise you it gets easier. So Xavier, are there any questions coming in so far?
We do have a question. What is the best way to find that average juice value over a few sessions or between different staffers?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, what I have done is when I write out my prep list, I'm very like explicit with how I want things done, right? So I always say, when I'm writing my prep list, I say, pull 30 lemons out of the refrigerator. Then I give them the next step and the next step. So I know that those lemons are going to come to room temperature, right? Because I know that's where I'm getting my highest yield. So the way I feel like over communicating is often the best way to make sure that you get things done. And the staff members that are taking the shortcuts, you see that pretty evidently in how they work otherwise. But I think that like there's something to be said for those people that we know are taking in information. Those are the people that are going to be like, why are you always telling me to pull 50 lemons out of the refrigerator and then telling me to do a bunch of other stuff? Like, why is it going out of order? Those curious people are the people that are probably wanting to tune into something like this to learn how to take the next step. As far as finding that median yield, it's very easy. Pull 2 lemons out of the refrigerator, juice 1 right away, measure it. And then wait an hour, juice the second one, measure it, and then find in between.
Good. It's a very good trick. Actually, I never knew about juicing warm citrus, but you can gain more juice. Mm-hmm. And I think every penny counts and matters, especially when the price of every ingredients can get more expensive years after years, and the price of selling the cocktails does not always increase because you want to keep your clients. Exactly. So you have to be very, very, very cautious about how get this margin made properly. I have another question for you. Sure. How does all this costing factor into what choices you make in menu development? Ask mainly in regard to citrus, as I recall a time when limes were very expensive. It's true, the limes were so expensive at one point. Yes.
Yes. So at that point, you know, when you're developing a menu, I hope that as you're developing a menu, you're looking at the cost of all these things. So, you know, okay, if we're going to get limes, we're going to turn that into a cordial, or we're going to turn that into something more shelf stable, or we're going to make sure that we use those limes in every possible cocktail, right? So that we're not wasting anything. I also am going to mention kind of down the road, but we can hit on it now, is that like for lemons and particularly oranges, if you do a ton of old fashions in your restaurant and you're peeling oranges like 1,000 times in a night, but you don't have a cocktail or two on your menu that's using orange juice, you are wasting money. So make sure that if you are garnishing something with a peel, that you are using the juice in that lemon to its fullest extent, which is why when we cost this out, you're going to see that I don't cost my lemon peel because I've already handled the cost of the lemon and the product that I'm using by calculating in the juice cost. Cool.
Good point. Yes. I don't think so far we have no more questions. So
let's move on.
Let's move on.
All right. I told you it was going to get easier after we talked about lemon juice and syrup. So these numbers I feel like are just like ingrained in my brain. I should at this point have them tattooed on my body because I can just like pull them out of thin air. But 2 things to note: a 750 milliliter bottle is 25.36052 ounces. A liter is 33.814. That's always the case. If not, you should probably talk to the brand and be like, why are you shorting me a fraction of an ounce in my bottle? So the easiest way to get your cost per ounce is to take the price of that bottle, divide it by the number of ounces, and there you go. If you are looking at the math when you're doing this on a calculator and you're like, do I round up or round down? Always round up. Because if you factor in that 1 cent here and that 1 cent ends up making or breaking your price, you've covered it. If you go down and that 1 cent is making or breaking something, then you are underselling yourself, right? So always overestimate. That puts you on the right side, okay? So when we look at bottles of spirits, it's pretty cut and dry. It's going to be the same amount of ounces. You divide it, simple division, you're done. Okay? So we found this is a 750 milliliter bottle of Grand Marnier. I looked up the price. It was $36.23 for the bottle, getting it from a distributor. And so we're looking at $1.43 an ounce. Okay? Pretty easy, cut and dry. Told ya. All right, one more step. We got one more ingredient. And this is the last one. And remember that syrups, juices, spirits, they all break very easily into ounces. This is where things become a little bit more complicated because unless you're making a Trinidad sour, you're not measuring bitters in ounces, right?
Correct.
So 1 dash, and this is, before I get into this, I actually need to pause. We now have like so many different style dasher tops, right? We have the dash darts that you can get to put on the top of little glass woozy bottles. We have the dasher tops that come in a lot of our bitters bottles. We have droppers. We have all kinds of things. This number is based on a dash dart. Okay, so please remember that before you move forward. Like, put it in all caps if you're taking notes on this page. Okay, so back to it. 1 dash is going to be 0.021 ounces. In a 5 ounce bottle, at that ounce, thankfully the bottle comes in ounces right away, so that already takes one step, one conversion out of the guesswork here. You're getting about 238 dashes in that bottle. If the bottle costs $5.50, divided by 238 dashes, your cost is 0.023 per dash. Like I said, seems a little scary at first because we're doing something other than ounces, but not too scary in the long run. And actually that number looks really familiar. When I went to cost things out, that's the cost of one of our other ingredients. So that worked out.
Of the simple syrup, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, and actually, it's a very important thing that you mentioned. I don't know everyone costing bitters, but don't forget that bitters it boomed, and there's so many bitters now. You can get a small bottles for like $20. So this can become very pricey.
Yeah.
And so if you buy a case of bitters in your inventory, you have already $100 of bitters. So it needs to be included into your cocktail recipe. Sometimes people don't do that, and it's not a cheap ingredient anymore.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think to your point, like 15, 20 years ago, maybe it was considered an ancillary cost, which is something we'll get into in a minute. But now it's so prevalent on every cocktail menu. There are bitters at play. There are dashes and drops of bitters. So it's just something we need to consider. And maybe, it's a rule for your bar that you don't consider it, but I hope that, if you take something away, this causes you to stop, look at the bitters that you use and say, maybe I should look at the cost of that just to make sure I'm good. So let's round it all up. So a cost per ounce of Grand Marnier was $1.43. A cost per dash of our orange bitters was just over 2 cents. The cost per ounce of lemon juice was 14 cents. And the cost per ounce of simple syrup was the same as our cost per dash. So when we plug that all in to our recipe, which is going to be our next slide. Okay, so going back, we're costing out Le Grand Ancillary. So 2 ounces of the Grand Marnier came out to $2.86. 1 ounce of the lemon juice came out to 14 cents. 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup came out to actually almost 2 cents, but just under. And then 3 dashes of our orange bitters. See where we're talking about how these things add up. That's 7 cents. Remember that I said I'm not going to include the lemon peel garnish, because if I have Le Grand Ancillary on my menu, I've already costed out that lemon. So if I am peeling from those lemons and then juicing those lemons later to, which is part of FIFO, first in, first out, you juice those peeled lemons first, you have paid for it in the costing of this cocktail. So we're looking at roughly $3.09 for the cost of this cocktail, now that we have worked it all out. So take a breath.
Ta-da!
I also am going to take a drink of water because it was a lot of talking, a lot of word problems. Any questions that have come in?
We don't have any questions so far, but one thing I'd also to just add for the price of a Grand Marnier, of course, you bought one bottle, but for people who work in the industry, you should know that if you buy by the case, you have also a way to drop the price, which of course maybe something you were prepared to mention, but so there is of course many deals that can be done to drop the price also in your cocktails once you start to have.
That's a like 201 thing when you start to move from costing to costing and buying, right?
Yeah.
Those decisions that, you know, a bar manager who is costing out everything and also making all the purchases is going to be like, oh, there's a case quantity on that. I'm doing this in a cocktail. I'm going to buy 2 cases of Grand Marnier. And then in some cases that drops your price per bottle, and then it makes your cocktail cost a little bit friendlier. So, and in a lot of places in the country, a lot of our bigger markets, that's not a scary cost of cocktail. There's actually way more costly cocktails out there. So don't be freaked out by that number. There's lots of ways to work with it. There's lots of wiggle room. Our entire industry is about building relationships, and this is no different. So
true. Actually, a question just came up.
Awesome.
Are there costs outside the drink we should consider? Breakage, bad fruit, so any kind of waste that can be considered into the cost?
Yep. So that's something that's part of keeping an eye on. You should also, if you are keeping a waste tab, that might be something that you quantify your waste so that you're tracking how much is coming from your produce person, that things are bad or they're crushed or things of that sort. But also, we're going to kind of talk about that in a minute when we touch on ancillary costs, because, I mean, to sum it up, shit happens, you know, like things break, things go bad. And there is a way to kind of take those costs into account without having to stress over every single cocktail that you're making and feel that you're not covering that cost. You know, if it's one bad lemon here or there, by doing that median, you've covered, you know, in a case of 165 lemons, if you have 3 crushed lemons that you throw out when it comes in, you've covered the cost, you know, by hitting that median. But it's important to make sure you're keeping an eye on your produce and to kind of know that breaking point for you, where you're like, this is a pattern, right? And we are, in our industry, very good at noticing patterns. You know, we notice through the course of a night, my 5 to 6 is slow, and then things really ramp up, hit their peak at 8 p.m. and we're just like cruising until like 11:30. That's a pattern. You're already attuned to noticing it. You just have to reframe it so that you're looking at these patterns in more than one place. And that's why this knowledge is like really, really important. And it's kind of considered taking that next step in your career. Because as somebody who's been a general manager many, many times, you know, part of what has made me a decent general manager is my ability to pay attention to all the pieces and everything that's going on. And as we train ourselves to do that, to pay attention to all the small, finer details, it becomes less stressful and it more just informs your decision-making and your thought processes as you move forward.
Well said.
Thank you. I try to speak well. All right, so we're ready to move on to the next piece.
Sure.
So I'm going to round this up real fast. Some things that will make this easier across the board. a little bit of work up front. Calculate the ounce cost of your entire inventory, including beer and wine. Just know what it costs. It's for non-math people, it's an absolute pain, but once you have it done, it is a absolutely invaluable resource that occasionally needs some updating, but for the most part, it can dictate a lot of your decisions moving forward. Please, please, please make sure you have your house-made recipes costed out, from a complicated shrub to your simple syrup, all of it. Don't leave anything out. One, it makes sure if you have these things written out and then costed, it shows, the people who are prepping your ingredients, the value that you place on it. And it also, that trickles down. If you value something, other people will value it. It's valuing something is contagious. And keep an eye on the price of produce. We've hammered this one home. Check probably once a month, at least once a quarter, and make sure that things are happening. If you're working in a place with a kitchen that has a chef team, or even just like an official prep cook, somebody that checks in those orders, like make sure that you all have like a check-in set, maybe every 2 weeks on Sundays when they're placing orders and they get their quote back for their order, you just say, hey, is anything going weird and wild? It's a 5-minute conversation that saves you a headache down the road. So this is the one screen that you might want to screenshot, because I took all of these word problems and I put them into formulas. So this is my recap. To get an ounce cost on juice, you are going to divide the case cost by the average ounce yield of each fruit multiplied by the case quantity. So if you have these formulas, you can literally just take out the words and plug in the knowledge that you've already put together. Syrup, I'm not even going to dive back into that. We already know it's complicated. Just take the words out, plug the numbers in. Spirits, same thing, and bitters. So if we can make that totally full screen one more time. So if anybody would like a screenshot, great, awesome. And I hope that is helpful to you. So a lot of these things, when we're talking about these processes in restaurants, they're either already put into a spreadsheet for us. So unless you're willing to dig into all the formulas, you're not going to learn exactly what went into it, or this isn't taught to you at all. So I hope that this is helpful. We can't get better until we know where things start, right? So by having this base level of knowledge, I hope that's helpful. So let's talk about some other things to consider. Ancillary costs. So these are just some examples. Ancillary costs are those costs of equipment, items, power, that all these things go into making the drink happen, right? So these are some examples. This is certainly not all of them, but ancillary costs is a nice little buzzword that will come in handy if you understand what it encompasses. So here's some examples. For every drink, a glass must be washed. So how much does each cycle in your dishwasher cost? Is there a lease on that dishwasher? How many glasses can fit in your dishwasher at once? All of this is adding up. Ice machines require electricity, water. Most people don't own their ice machines outright. There's often a monthly lease that they're paying off. What does that cost? How labor intensive is your drink? Your syrup, there are syrups that people are making that take hours of labor. What does that labor cost? If you're only getting 3 quarts out of a recipe and that's only making 70 drinks, you got to factor that in. Those cents make a difference. How often does your bar have to purchase or break out new glassware? This is what we were talking about before with breakage. I mean, this happens all the time. We see it, a glass breaks once a night, if not a few times a night, and that adds up. We're talking things that can range from $1 to $10 a glass. Does the drink require a straw? We're not using plastic straws anymore because this has come, capitalism, supply and demand, right? Everybody's charging so much money for paper straws. So you need to factor that in. Does the drink require a straw? Do you use beverage napkins? Do you use coasters? All these things cost money. So all of that is like a very tedious calculation. And to be quite honest, like I value your labor. Nobody that isn't an owner or a manager is getting paid that much to sit down and calculate all of this. I don't want you to minimize your hourly wage. Even managers that are on a salary, like this work is above your pay grade, and it is okay to say that because this is something that your owners should be keeping an eye on. And your owners, if they value your labor, they'll already have their eye on this number. So maybe you ask them if they have a comfortable like surcharge, not that you charge to the customer, but that you charge in the cost of your drink that helps cover those ancillary costs over time. If you have 100 to 300 drinks going out in a night and you tack on 7 cents to your cost and calculate from there, 7 cents times 100 to 300 drinks, and in a lot of bars, it's a lot more drinks, that adds up and that can help them foot the bill. So I think a lot of owners out there would value the person costing their menu, coming to them and saying, hey, I want to take into account our ancillary costs. See that buzzword? They're going to be like, ooh, you know about ancillary costs? So by having that conversation, it shows that you know the value of what you're making. And two, it allows your drinks to be costed in a way that at the end of the day, when your owner is looking at numbers and being like, I don't know how we're doing, especially in this time, like think of COVID, you have less drinks going out, you're watching your costs. This is a really important thing to consider. So have that conversation if you feel comfortable. If not, bring it to a supervisor that you trust and have them have that conversation because everybody wins in this scenario.
Especially during this time, I agree. Every penny matters.
Yes. Do we have any questions coming in before I touch on beer and wine just shortly?
We don't have any question at this time, so feel free to continue, Chelsea.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So beer and wine. Once again, remember the basics is to get it to a common denominator, right? So I'm going to cost this into ounces because thankfully with beer and wine, it's pretty easy because we all know what our house pours are, to then multiply it up and get your cost of a pour. So cans and bottles, that's pretty easy. You take your case, you divide it by quantity. That's your cost per pour. For kegs, you're going to take your cost of kegs, you're going to divide it by the total ounces. You'll see below that I put the 3 main sizes of kegs and how many ounces they each have in them and their gallons. So once I'm done going through this, we'll blow it up so everybody can get a screenshot of this. Then you're going to take your total ounces and you're going to round them down. And the reason for that, remember that we always want to overestimate so that, even if we spend less, we're on the right side of things, right? When you are talking about kegged beer, unless you have a kegerator that your kegs are with you behind the bar, which is commonplace, but unless that's a thing, if you have a keg that is in any walk-in other than where you are standing right now, you need to round it down because every time you change a keg, you're wasting beer. Every time you need to over pour a beer to get the foam down, you're wasting beer. So by rounding down your total ounces, you're creating this like nice little pocket of wiggle room to set yourself right. And then of course, to get that, you're going to get the cost of a pint of beer, you're going to multiply it by your pour size. Know how many ounces are in your pint. Not every pint has 16 ounces. So make sure that you know the size of your glassware. For wine, also pretty easy. The glass cost is going to be your bottle cost divided by the total ounces. Most wine comes in 750 milliliter bottles. So that should be pretty easy to find. And then you're going to multiply it by your house pour. I also put below that because I know that a lot of people are serving kegged wine right now because it's delicious and it's easy and there's less waste at the end of the day. Wine in kegs, particularly those crushable, recyclable ones, they often come in the 20-liter size. So that's 676 ounces. So let's blow that up for a second. Make sure that if anybody wants a screenshot, they can get it. Awesome. Cool. All right.
We do have actually a question. Do you consider changing pour sizes, glassware size, etc. when you get this cost? What are other factors to balance this with?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a craft cocktail bar, the chances are that we have a couple different options of up glasses already. We have a couple different options for down glasses already. Often, you know, particularly when I'm costing craft beer, right? Craft beer can fluctuate wildly in its cost. And so I don't like to go into a place that has like, here are like 4 $6 pints, 5 $7 pints, and then there's this one guy that's like $11. Like that doesn't make much sense. So you can either equalize the price to make sure that, you know, the things that you would need to charge $11 for, you can charge a little bit less by bringing maybe your $6 and $7 guys up to $8 and bringing that last one down to $9. Or you can also say, maybe this beer isn't served in a pint glass. Maybe we serve it in a different beer glass. You know, how often you're going to sell that beer, getting a smaller beer glass for that beer and just being candid about that on your menu, saying this is a 10-ounce pour, not a 16-ounce. Sometimes that can help. And oftentimes there's so many beer glasses out there. Oftentimes it's actually the better glass for your beer, just as far as nose and like how you're supposed to enjoy that style. And those more expensive ones are typically higher in alcohol. You don't want to give them 16 ounces of that anyway. You want to sell more pints, more glasses of that beer instead of just sell one and send them stumbling out the door, right? So
it's true there's so many microbreweries and great beers, local beers, of course, but the price goes up. So now we see different size of glass. And I agree, we have to be careful. Some beers can be a bit dangerous because they are higher in alcohol. So what would be your regular wine pour for a glass? How many ounces would you pour in a wine glass? What's the average?
Sure. So in my experience, what I typically see when I'm consulting on places is anywhere between 5 and 6 ounces, depending on the place, depending on the glassware. That's why a lot of places, if they're doing 6-ounce pours, they'll also offer a half price 3-ounce pour for people who are like, oh, I'll just do like a half glass, you know, to finish off the night, but that's still a sale they can close on. But I found that like 5.5 ounces, it appears in the glass to be a really, really nice sized pour, but it's also, you know, it's on the upper side of things. So people feel like they're getting a better value.
And for wine pairing, how much ounces would you put? Half like a 3 ounces if you do a wine pairing with a tasting menu?
Probably, just because depending on the size of your tasting menu, that's a lot of glasses at the end of the day to get through. Even sometimes when you're talking about tasting menus, you know, you often have a lot of really small, like amuse-bouche size courses. That may be the place to maybe just do like a third of a glass, so that when you get to like something, a bigger plate, something that's very meat heavy, something that's going to dry out your mouth, maybe that's when you say, you just pony up and you say, okay, I'm going to pour a full glass for this course, you know? So it's, you know, if they are doing just a small bite and they just need to wash it down, maybe that like 2.5 ounces is really like a happier way to go, and it helps with your cost.
At the end, this is your experience, right?
Yeah. If they can't remember dessert, then it's not much of an experience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. If you forget the end of a dinner, it's not going to be great.
Right.
I don't think I have any more questions for you. So feel free to continue.
Slides back up on the screen then.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to do a small word about market research. So this is something that I could teach an entire other class on, particularly because I consult and I do a lot of openings. This is something that I do a lot. And when I'm opening a place, I typically go to visit or at least look at the menu of everywhere around. So if you're the manager who's held accountable for that profit cost ratio, you're also likely the person who is maintaining relationships with those who are running the other bar programs around you. For the sake of community and also for the sake of keeping your owner happy, you know, there's some things you have to take into account. So you're wanting to first look at similar concepts, look at similar tying binds that you have with concepts around you. So your style of dining, your level of commitment to craft cocktails, you know, places that measure out their cocktails versus places that free pour, same price point on food, same amenities. And there's nothing wrong with free pouring. It just
It's just something to take into account. The same amenities. Yeah, that's where I wanted to leave off with that. So for this, they don't have to tick all of those same boxes. You should kind of have like the groups in your head, right? So you should look at 5 places that have a similar style of dining. And this is going to be in your zip code. This is going to be in your neighborhood. This is going to be in your town as a whole. Larger markets, this is very difficult to do. So you may just start at this first bullet point to say, like, we're going to look at places that have a similar style of dining and that their food, they're charging the same prices for it, right? And so you want to look at these individually, and then you want to look at them in conjunction. So you want to look at 5 places that have a similar style of dining regardless of price point. You want to look at 5 places that you admire their commitment to craft cocktails. You want to look at 5 places that have the same price point on food. See the things that intersect. Those are going to be ones that you like particularly want to pay attention to. The reason for this is you don't want to undersell yourself. So if you know that you're going to be compared against somebody else because of price point, because of style, anything like that, you don't want to undersell yourself against them. And you also want to be a good neighbor. You're building community. That's your entire job. So you don't want to like undercut those businesses, be the new asshole on the block that's like, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm just going to sell my Tito's for like $2 less. And like, forget those guys. They're never selling Tito's again. Like I'm sorry, I mentioned a different brand, but it was like, it's something.
It's plenty of brands on the market, so totally fine.
I apologize.
No worries.
So, you don't want to undercut those businesses. If somebody's selling their Grand Marnier for $11, you don't want to be like, well, I'm coming in and selling it for $8, and you're like 2 blocks away. Like, that's not fair to them. You want to be more conscious about that, because when you get into a pinch, those are going to be the people who are able to help you. They have the same access to resources that you do. They have the same distributors likely and connections that you do. So don't burn those bridges in the sake of making money. That's like a really, really important lesson to learn when you're writing a menu, because your gut reaction is going to be like, I want to make the most money possible. And that's just not sustainable for the larger community of restaurants.
True.
Yep. So once you have that happy balance, like I said, this is going to be 201, because then you're actually like pricing everything out and setting your menu and curating. These are we'll blow this up because these are like some simple conversions for like those 5s for costs. So 15%, 20%, 25, 30. I would not suggest costing anything over 30 on your cocktail menu, but sometimes you have to. And you can, and this is actually the last thing on this slide, but it's important. There's virtue in balancing your menu, making more profit on something in your rail in order to make less profit on something expensive on your back bar. So then all of your liqueurs, for example, are between 8 and 11 because you charged $6 for the vodka in your rail, right? So you don't want to create these wild outliers, because those outliers, unless they have some wild notoriety, they don't sell. So there's virtue in balancing that menu. And so that means that you're going to have cocktails on your menu that are costed at 9%, and you're going to have cocktails on your menu that are at 29. And at the end of the day, look at the menu as a whole, get it to a number that makes you feel comfortable and that makes your owner comfortable, and tweak those numbers accordingly. Another thing to consider is if you are including tax in your advertised price, or if you're adding it onto the check, because the guest is going to look at the cost on the menu, but then they also have to feel okay with what they spent at the end. So if you know that the restaurant tax in your area is super high, it might be something to roll into your price, because people will probably value knowing upfront what they're going to spend. And then wines by the glass are priced differently than wine by the bottle. A growler may not be directly proportional to a pint. In order to move volume, in order to minimize waste, you might not have exactly 5 glasses worth in the price of your wine by the bottle, right? You might only charge for 4 glasses in an effort to encourage people to buy the whole bottle, and then it lessens your waste. Do we have any questions before we kind of close things out here? Because we have hit exactly an hour, and I am impressed.
Perfectly on time. We have one more question. How do you calculate over garnishes, which are sit in syrup, juices like olives or cherries? How would you calculate all those garnishes, which are maraschino cherries can be, if you're on the nice brand, it can cost a lot of money as well. So it's important.
Right. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. And that really depends on what your owner like values as far as when they're looking at inventory. A lot of owners don't want you to count out cherries, obviously, like because then they pay for your labor and then it costs them more money for you to sit and count out how many cherries there are, right? So that might be something that you say, okay, every 2 months we buy the giant thing of cherries, right? And we store that properly and make sure that it stays fresh and nice because they're all in syrup, right? So there's a way to store them where they can last for a very long time. That's how they're designed. So you may say like, every once in a while we spend this amount of money. And then when you have that conversation about ancillary costs, you may say, let's roll that into ancillary costs. There's also the option of saying like, there are roughly this amount of cherries in this container. Most of them don't count them individually. That's the big problem. They're all by weight. And unless you're like, you're taking like 20 to 30 cherries and getting like a sample weight amount, like it's very labor intensive to cost that out. By all means, if you want to do it, go for it. But I think that there's like a way that's healthier with like your boundaries and the use of your time than trying to go that granular, particularly for something that you don't necessarily buy every week. As far as like herbs and things go, absolutely cost those out, particularly because herbs tend to go bad faster. So you need to know what the cost is of that. And you need to be like keeping an eye on how much you throw out, and how you store your herbs is really, really important to that longevity. So what I would do is I typically talk to my kitchen people, or I talk to my vendor, and I, ask to see what the quantity of the herbs that we're going to be buying, so you have like the 9-ounce clamshell sometimes you have like a 5-ounce clamshell, sometimes you're getting a pound. When you know what quantity you're going to buy, before you cost, ask to see it, because then you can look at it and you can say, I'm going to get roughly like this many sprigs of rosemary out of this. I'm going to get so many leaves of basil out of this. That way you can at least get a roundabout number of what you're looking at.
What is, I know you mentioned different costing, and of course, some cocktails going to cost more, some cocktails going to cost less. And at the end, this is a whole menu that really matters. But what percentage of cost are you looking for when you cost a menu? What would be the best? Is it 15%, the most average? Is it less than that?
Yeah, I think it's really down to the style of dining, right? The style of your bar. If you have a restaurant where food cost is really low, like you're doing like snack stuff, right? So you're doing stuff that's like churn and burn, easy to get out of the kitchen. People order like 3 things to share. And so they're just like, it's like fun, snacky food. Their food cost is typically a little bit lower, right? As opposed to a fine dining restaurant where you're talking like really, really high food costs on some of those dishes. The important thing to remember in that case is that drinks are really the bread and butter of restaurant. It's where most of the money is made. So if you are operating with a super high food cost, do your chef a favor and try to aim for like a 17% average across your menu. Some places that's just not possible, particularly because you're carrying higher quality spirits. You are doing a lot of in-house labor to make house-made ingredients. And, 17% is like unattainable at that point. I take Baltimore into consideration for this because Baltimore is a very like blue collar market. And so really, really expensive drinks and really expensive items don't sell to the person who wants to come back to that restaurant every week. And that's our goal. We want the person who comes back every week, every 2 weeks. So I have to automatically make my costs a little bit higher because then at that point, volume is more important, than the individual cost of the cocktail, right?
That's a very good point.
It's difficult for me to like give percentages or like a place to aim without knowing where, you know, you're coming from. And that's where market research comes in, right? You don't want to, if everybody around you is doing $8 cocktails, you don't want to do $12 cocktails. It's just how it's got to be, because then you're going to be the one that's chosen as either the last resort or the special date night, right? You want those people who come back more than once.
It's very important to understand the market. I totally agree with you. And I think let's not forget that, if I may add something to this amazing presentation that you just did, Chelsea, that's our money. It's how we make money. The margin in the restaurant and bar business are very small, very thin. So it's important to cost properly for drinks. At the end, we can be passionate. We can have a great time in the front of the clients. We can have an amazing bar, which is full. If the bar doesn't make money in the back, there's no point. The whole point is to make money and also behind this whole fun. So right. It's where we get the money. So costing, it's so important. That's the base of a work when you work behind the bar or in a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we don't have any more questions. Is there any last words you would like to say, Chelsea, to everyone bring us?
You can put the slide back up. I know that this is Costing 101. This is not 201. There's like 301, 401 to 901. There's a lot more that we can dive into. So here are a couple ways that you can get in touch with me. This is something that I'm very passionate about, something that I like to do. I like to do education like this. And particularly in COVID, it's made me realize like how our most valuable resource right now is time. And so if I can give some of my resources to help everybody get on the right side and to further understand what they're doing, then like I feel like I have done the work that helps everybody out. So without further ado, this weekend, maybe beginning of next week, I'm going to be making the Drinkable Genius Patreon Live, which I have spent years in many restaurants consulting for, and I have decided on templates that work for me to help me understand what I'm doing, that I have used throughout my career. And so I would like to, if you want to subscribe, make those available to you. If it saves you an hour making a spreadsheet to download one of mine, like I would love to do that for you. And I just ask that you, pay me for a coffee once a month or for a beer. Or there's different tiers and they have different things. And we'll be doing more education like this, where, it's face-to-face via Zoom or something like that, where we can, talk through these things. And I can hopefully be a resource to you. As always, drinkablegenius.com is my company's website. And you can learn more about me there. You can also get in touch. And I hope that you do. Please don't shy away from asking questions. Rising tide raises all ships. And if I can help you in any way, I would love to. And then, of course, the most day-to-day easy way to get a hold of me is to follow me on Instagram at Gregoire Drinks. It's my last name. It's difficult to spell. So you can also just search for Chelsea Greg and it'll probably pop up. But yeah, please follow me on Instagram. Get in touch. Don't be a stranger. And just always let me know how I can serve you. We're in the business of serving people, and we got to start with serving each other first.
Thank you very much, Chelsea, for, again, this very informative presentation. And once again, it was Chelsea Gregoire and myself, Xavier Herit. This session was sponsored by Marnier from the Campari Group. This is also our partnership with Portland Cocktail Week. Thank you, everyone, for following us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Chelsea. And I hope this will help you to continue to learn and cost better your drinks moving forward. Chelsea, enjoy your first day. Have a great day, everyone, and stay tuned.
Thank you.
Bye.